Hi, my name's Nikki, and this is The Interventionalist, and today is February 13th, 2025. It is the day before Valentine's Day, and I want to talk about love, but I want to talk about the very particular and specific impact that the loss of romantic love and heartbreak can have. The very, profound, sort of incomparable experience that is romantic love and the loss of romantic love, and the way that can truly change you as a person. And it's one of those things, it's one of those experiences, this emotion that you'll chase that you'll almost be willing to derail your life for at some points, which is it's a pretty crazy thing, right? It really is. Love can kind of just drive us mad. It can make us a little bit crazy, make us feel a little out of our mind, nothing else matters in the face of something like this. It's so overwhelmingly intense for so many reasons. Biologically, I guess, the kind of chemicals that it releases in your head, the kind of bond. I don't know. It's just overwhelmingly intense, and it's something that we as a species, I think, have been heavily affected by throughout time. I think that's very evident if you go back and you look through art all throughout history. There's always representations and manifestations of love, of arrows of romantic love, and how much it means to us as humans. And sometimes I think that romantic love in and of itself is a form of escapism from reality. I think that that very intense desire, that living in that space in between, between having somebody and not having them, living in that space of desire is a form of escapism in and of itself. And I feel romantic love for some reason creates the perfect suspension for that escapism, because that's not a person in your life in an obligatory way, a family member, right? You guys would have to be choosing each other. So there's that space where choice must exist, that I think a lot of that escapism can live, that desire where sometimes limerence can live. Anyways, I'm just thinking about that. That's kind of a side note. But I've been thinking about this all day because romantic love has had an impact on me. The lack of romantic love, the lack of love in my life in general, and then the having it and then the loss of it has really impacted me. And I sometimes feel silly when I talk about how much being in love has affected me. I've only been in love, I would say, I don't know, I would probably say only once. I've been in 2 relationships. I was in an abusive relationship in 2022, and then I was in one in 2024, and I was very in love. And in the abusive one, I wouldn't say I was in love. I would say I was trauma bonded. And in 2024, I would say I was in love. I would say I was quite in love. I also think I was just very, very attached because of the context of the relationship. But I've only really been in love then, I guess, once. And sometimes I hesitate to talk about it because I feel it's almost embarrassing to be so affected by it for some reason. It feels almost like this embarrassing secret that I need to keep to be so profoundly impacted by romantic love. I feel it'll turn me into a trope of the damsel in distress or the girl who's obsessed with love, right? All of these really sexist, misogynistic tropes that we're exposed to. And that's another thing, we'll talk about that in a second, but essentially I'm not going to be able to pronounce that word right now. The propaganda that is romantic love. But I sometimes feel a little bit embarrassed by it. I think I can't believe I've been this affected by something this small, and we scale it compared to the bigger harms in the world, which is true, right? Harm can be scaled, but at the end of the day, the harm that is closest to you will obviously, most likely, be the most overwhelming because it's the most close to you. So when your personal relationships blow up, or the relationships, the attachments most deeply rooted in you blow up, I think it's going to affect you the hardest, no matter how small it is on the grand scale, the grand scheme of things in the world. And so I know that, but I still feel a little bit embarrassed by it. And then I was actually, no, it's not that embarrassing. I think I will talk about it because there's a whole damn day dedicated to this. There's Valentine's Day. There's a whole day that we as a people have dedicated to this. I don't know, would you call it a holiday for romantic love, to celebrate it. It's meant that much to us as a species. For whatever reason, it has meant that much to us, and I think only continues to mean that much to us, and mean that much to us not only for whatever very human, animalistic reason when it comes to maybe your attraction to somebody. I also think it means a lot to us from a social perspective, social capital and social value. I mean, the fact that it even is a holiday, I guess. I don't know if you would call it a holiday, but I'm going to call it a holiday. And the fact that it is even a nationally recognized day, I guess, is kind of crazy because it's also turned in romantic love in particular is turned into something that feels like something you need to obtain. There is a day out of the year that's supposed to mark your having of this thing that you have then achieved, this social value, right? This social capital that you now have, and you can celebrate and participate in this day. by having this thing. But this thing is worthy of celebration because you should have it. You should want to have it. And so I think no matter what your sexuality is, you might not even want to be, you may be aromantic altogether. There's so much pressure in a lot of societies. I mean, I can't speak globally. I can only speak where I'm from, which is the United States. Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. It's because I had a lot of caffeine earlier. And I thought it would like go down, but oh my God, it's really not. Sorry. But, oh gosh, what was I saying? I can't speak for obviously globally, like how pushed romance is, but at least like in the United States where I am, even if you're like aromantic, there is such a social push for romantic relationships and to be in a romantic relationship. And I think a lot of it has to do with like literally being if you're born into a culture like this, like born into a culture where one of the first tropes you ever become aware of in any form of media is romance. Is like the damsel in distress, right? Like it is being a lover and having a love. And then with that comes all of the different like sexist and misogynistic things that accompany those tropes. But that's like one of the first tropes that you really, I don't know, are in the things that we read as kids, like the Disney princess stories, some of the things that we were first exposed to as children when it comes to stories and storytelling are rooted in love and romantic relationships and the pursuing of romantic relationships and being pursued by somebody in a romantic relationship. And there's social value in that. And by obtaining something that has social value, it's also a social power. And I think because of that, romantic love like continues to be something that even if you might not genuinely long for it on a very like authentic level where your body yearns for it the way that maybe mine does. I can't speak for someone who like doesn't really experience that, who might be aromantic. I think that the part of us that still yearns to be like socially successful, you know, or to fit in will still yearn for it, something that we might not even actually want. And I think that can be very confusing because then when you do have it, the loss of it can hit even harder because now you've lost a form of social capital and value, something that gave you social value, because I think it had like social capital. So I think that there's like aspects to it that are quite political that contribute to the way that it means so much to us, and then the loss of it also means, or it makes the loss of it mean that much more to us and have that much more of an impact. And as a result, though, as well, it makes me feel a little bit embarrassed to talk about because it makes me feel like I'm becoming that trope, that sexist sort of misogynistic trope where it's silly and so girly and silly to be so in love with love, whatever. And so I sometimes hesitate to talk about it, but it really does mean a lot to me. And I really like love, and I've only been in love once, but it means a lot to me, and I find it to be very fascinating from a social perspective, and romantic love in particular from a social perspective. But anyways, I don't really know. It's just Valentine's Day tomorrow, and I kind of just wanted to talk about it, like what's on my mind. So I was thinking about the way that it changes you in particular, which was originally what I wanted to talk about when I was going to film this. And I was just thinking about how, you know, being in love, I think romantic love in particular has a very unique ability to affect you in ways that no other relationship or attachment can. And I don't know why. I'm sure that there's psychologists and psychiatrists who can answer those questions, but romantic relationships really can uncover parts of you that nothing else can uncover. I think that they just can bring out sides of you that no other relationships can bring out in you. I don't know why. They just do. I don't know if it's the intensity of the love. I don't know what it is, but it really can hit you in a way that other love and relationships can't. I think it feels like maybe there's so much writing on them, partially because of the social aspect, the social pressure, that sort of social pressure to, no matter what your sexuality is, or maybe like that lack thereof, if you're not actually like a romantic person, that social pressure to still have a partner one day, get married, have a partner, to want romance, to achieve romance is still there. I'm sure that is part of the reason that it like feels so attached. It can hit you so hard and it can attach to you so hard, and thus the loss of it hits even harder to lose that attachment. I was just thinking about why it changes you so much to lose it. And I was like doing some research. I was doing some reading on why that is. And I think that there's some obvious reasons. When you spend so much time with somebody, you really do sort of merge as people, not necessarily a mesh, but you merge as people. And here's a couple of the things I read that sort of support that idea that I think will speak to what I'm about to say. So one article, I'll put below the articles I read too, but it said, your bodies really co-regulate when you live in such close proximity and in an intimate way with someone. Your heartbeats actually regulate when you're asleep. Your cortisol levels line up. Your morning and evening cortisol levels. Your respiration rates sometimes line. There are a lot of studies showing that when you put a couple in a brain scanner and you give them a task, their brain waves actually sync up in the same way. So you sort of, in some way, you become one, right? Like you're sort of merging into one person, not even necessarily enmeshment, right? Like we want to avoid enmeshment when we're in relationships where you are really like merging into one person instead of really being like two people anymore. You're codependent, you've completely enmeshed. But I think that kind of speaks to the idea that with just so much time with somebody, with so much intimacy, you do kind of create this like one being. You merge into this one person, you sync up in some way. Like it talks about, I read another article that talks about the same idea, essentially like syncing up and how it puts you on like the same wavelength. And, you know, I don't know, I guess I was just thinking about the way that when I was in love and that relationship ended, it felt like, God, it really felt like I was dying. I mean, it sounds so dramatic, but I think if you've experienced that, you know that pain. But that's another reason sometimes it feels embarrassing to talk about, because I think if somebody hasn't experienced the pain of heartbreak, like really deep heartbreak, they might see it as silly, like, oh my God, it's just a relationship. But if you've experienced that pain, then you know that pain is so overwhelming and gut-wrenching. It literally felt like my stomach was eating itself, and not even out of hunger. It kind of just felt like my body was eating itself alive. Like I was just, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It was just so painful, and I felt like also stunned at the same time. I kind of felt like from the moment that I found out that my ex-girlfriend had cheated on me, did I mention that already in the beginning of this? That my last relationship, she cheated on me. I think I did. Sorry, I had so much caffeine. When I found out, I felt like for months after that, I was in this like weird state of paralysis where I was kind of disassociated, but also stunned and paralyzed, reliving that moment over and over again and just stuck in that pain. Like it wasn't going anywhere. It's like it wasn't even circulating in my body. I don't even know if that makes sense. It didn't even feel like it was like circulating throughout my body, like I was moving and therefore it had to move with me in some way or another. It felt like my body was frozen and I was frozen, and that pain that was living inside of me was frozen with it. So like it never faded. It never like moved around and got like less intense in some spots and like more intense in others. It just was all around. My entire body just felt like numb or paralyzed, I guess, at the same time as it was in immense pain. And I felt like I was frozen like that for months. And then it wasn't until I guess I sort of like came to and I was unfrozen that things started to move again. And then as things began to move, like the pain began to move, and then I sort of had hot spots, and some days like my heart hurt worse, and then other days like my lungs hurt, and other days my head hurt, right? And as I moved, it moved with me. And then eventually, like when you move so much, it moves through you. And that pain has like moved through me. But for a while, it was just paralyzed with me. And it was really overwhelming. And it's hard to even remember. And I loved her so much, and I trusted her so much. And I always knew that if the relationship ended, you know, it would hurt, it would affect me. But I guess I never anticipated how badly it would affect me. I don't think I'd ever been... I don't know if I've ever been that paralyzed with pain. And that's interesting considering on this channel I talk about abusive relationships. I've been in an abusive relationship. She was the first person I was in love with or even had feelings for after that a relationship. And I talk about that on here. And even then, like, that pain didn't compare. And it reminds me of something that I read like years ago now. I read this book by actually, let me just find the name of it. I read this book called Isis and Osiris, Exploring the Goddess Myth by Jonathan Cott years ago, back in like 2023. And there's something in that book. It's about the Egyptian creation myth. And there's something in that book I have never forgotten, and I still think about. And whenever I think about love and how much it changes me, or has changed me, or how much it's impacted me, and how much I see it impact other people in the world, and why I think it means so much to so many people that we have developed a fucking day for it. It had this line, and I wish I still had it saved, but essentially it said that when you're in love, there is a part of you that opens up that reaches your most sensitive points, essentially. Like, your most sensitive points are now accessible like opened up by this feeling, by this relationship. And so you can hear things about yourself that you otherwise would never hear. And so words can hurt you in a very different way because they can reach a very sensitive part of you that they otherwise never could. And that made so much sense to me because that's what it felt like. It felt like when I was in an abusive relationship, I think you can be in love and have been in an abusive relationship. I think I was really just trauma bonded, and she really could never hit me in the ways that the pain that she caused me, she was never going to be able to cause such a specifically intimate kind of pain that my ex-girlfriend did that cheated on me that I was in love with, because she did not have access to that part of me, the part of yourself that I think literally you only access once you've been in love. There is a part of you, I swear, it's romantic love. There's a part of us that we literally cannot access until romantic love comes into play, if you are a romantic person. And when that happens, you learn shit about yourself that you didn't know. That's like been stored behind a door that you didn't even know was there, let alone know that there was even a key to. And now suddenly it's open. And that's scary because you're opening a door at the same time that somebody else is opening it essentially for you. They are the key. They've opened that door. And so you're learning all this shit about yourself that was behind that door, and they get to see it. And that's really vulnerable and really scary to know that there's parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed that now somebody else is seeing. And we really only develop a sense of, I would say, like self, like feel like we can protect ourselves, right? Like feel self, yeah, I guess there is a word I can't think of right now, but we like secure in ourselves when we know that we can protect ourselves. And that usually comes through knowing yourself, because the more that you know yourself, the more secure you can feel in yourself, the more that you can deal with the things that could be used against you. Because when you work through something that you feel insecure about, nobody else can really weaponize it against you. And then now someone's opening a fucking door, and there might be shit back there that you're insecure about that hurts, and you don't know yet because you haven't seen it. And this person now has the opportunity to sort of use it to hurt you because you're still vulnerable, because you haven't been able to like get comfortable or acquainted with this knowledge about yourself that you would need to in order to like develop that sense of security, or even like self-understanding and self-awareness related to it. Because sometimes it's like a bag of shit that you didn't even know you had, right? Like it's like opens, I don't know, what would it be, like baggage? It makes you aware of some baggage that maybe you didn't even realize you have. I don't even think sometimes it's baggage. I think sometimes it's really beautiful things that you suppress. Like when I was in love with the woman who cheated on me, there were things about my personality that I didn't even know existed, but it was because I had never felt safe in a relationship. And so there were just things about who I was in a relationship that I didn't know about myself, because I never felt safe enough to just be myself in a relationship. So there was like a door inside of me that was opened, and it wasn't even just like a door of, I don't know, baggage of teaching me about attachment issues I had from the past that I didn't even realize, I think romantic relationships have a particular knack for doing that. But it taught me stuff about myself, or it brought out stuff about myself that I didn't even know was there, about things that I wanted or that I desired, or who I was in moments where I was least afraid that the person in front of me would hurt me for being who I was. And because of that, it made me feel like free. It made me feel free and happy in a way that I never had been before. And I don't think her and I were meant to be long term. When I look back now, I can totally see that. But at the end of the day, like, I won't deny that in that relationship, I felt more myself than I had probably since I was a child, and the world started, like putting filters on you. And I felt safe. And so everything that like came out, not only did I have to work on issues that were not so fun, that were like a result of cruelty from the past, but parts of me came out that were only ever going to come out in the face of kindness and kindness backed by real love. And that was really overwhelming, right? Because like I didn't know this stuff about myself. I didn't know this is who I was in relationships. I didn't know I thought this way. I didn't know I laughed this way. I didn't know my laugh could sound like this. I didn't know my laugh could sound this carefree. I didn't know I could laugh and not care about what it sounded like in front of the person that I'm worried, like, if they don't like me anymore, like that'll be terrible. It'll be really painful to lose them and in this romantic person, right? Like, I didn't know all this stuff about myself. I didn't know this is how I behaved in relationships, all these different things. And, I don't know, it's hard to remember because the loss then of that romantic love, the betrayal, which is a whole topic in and of itself, right? To be betrayed by someone, to be blindsided by somebody is particularly painful. But the loss of it was really weird and confusing because it opened up that door. It opened up a couple different doors, right? It opened up the door that I think a lot of romantic relationships do, which is a door where some baggage is behind it that you probably aren't aware of until you're in another romantic relationship, maybe from a past one or just from the past in general. And then it opened up this door that was a person that I hadn't been before, a person that I hadn't been since I was a child, like before I had really experienced any real relationship cruelty. And I don't even just mean romantic relationships, like just cruelty in relationships with people. And when that relationship ended and the pain of that relationship ended, obviously I was in this state of paralysis, this like really immense pain. And I also like felt this anxiety and this worry that I was sort of stupid to be this affected by it, that I needed to get over it. But no matter how much I thought that, it wasn't changing the fact that I felt like I was paralyzed like this and like couldn't move in so much pain. I thought it was insane that this was hurting me somehow worse than the abusive relationship I was in, and I didn't understand why. Now I realize why, and it's because it touched a part of me that abusive relationship never could, because kindness reaches a part of you that cruelty never can, and therefore it reaches deeper. And when the person who had extended that kindness hurts you, it hurts worse because it's further inside you. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm getting lost. Oh God, I don't know. Sometimes when I think about that, like experience being in love and like everything that came with it, it's just like a really overwhelming memory. I think less about the good things, right? Like the good things that I was left with. Or I guess, yeah, that's what I was saying. When the relationship ended, I was left with all of this information about myself. I was left with the information about like relationship baggage that came out from the abusive relationship that came out in that one and that I was aware of. So, okay, I can deal with that. But the thing that really shocked me and that I think also left me in a sort of like state of paralysis and not knowing how to move forward was the person that I came to know who existed in the face of kind love and love, true, like genuine romantic love. And the person that I was who, oh, this sounds sad, but it's fine. Have you ever seen that like trend? It's like, have you ever had it all before or something? It's like very close. I almost did like once, had everything you ever wanted or something. Or it was like, have you ever gotten everything you ever wanted once? I was very close or something. As someone who like grew up and I think I used romantic love as a form of escapism at times, even though I was never in it. For different reasons. I've talked about in videos. I think part of it was being closeted and daydreaming and also like not having a very kind like family growing up, so you escape into like the salvation of love that is chosen rather than one that's supposed to be obligated by family members. Love always meant a lot to me, and then to have had it too and then to lose it, I think caused another wave of embarrassment and shame and anxiety that contributed to that paralysis from like the social value, the social capital perspective, because I had this thing not only I always wanted, sort of like a dream, a fantasy, I always wanted love, and I never imagined being able to find like kind love just because my experiences, and then also to obtain something that I think I've been raised and socialized to believe meant so much to my social value and my social experience and what will create like a happy life for me. And also I really think it will. I really do like love. I really do like being a partner. Losing it then again, and then in the way that I did, being cheated on in that way, I feel like caused a whole other wave of like shame and anxiety. But it also brought something out, which was the person I became when I like got very close to having like essentially all I ever wanted before, that very close. I got very close once. That was me, because I loved love, and I really did want to be in love. I like fantasized about it, right? And I thought it was like this very big social thing that you could achieve. And I also loved kind love, and I'd never experienced it. And I'd been gay and in the closet, so I couldn't have love in all these different ways. And so then to have had it, it meant so much to me. It felt like the thing always so out of reach, because I was not raised in like a very kind, loving home. I wasn't allowed to love because I was closeted and around a lot of homophobia. And I finally had it. So not only did I feel like, okay, I was like partially fulfilling like a social capital, social value, something that I like daydreamed about my whole life was to experience love and like kind love. And then I'm also like experiencing a part of myself that I haven't known in like years, which is a carefree, like loving person that I haven't been in years and years. And I was this person in this relationship. That's what this relationship allowed me to be. The person who felt like they almost had it all, like everything they'd ever wanted, because at that time love just felt that important to me, for a lot of different reasons. And it felt like when that relationship ended, I was left with that person, like who I'd become, the person who was so close to having all they ever wanted once, even though it's not really, but like, I think if that makes sense. I was left with that person, like who I had become in those moments and who I'd become in that relationship. And I knew what it felt like now, like to have that sort of hope, to have that attachment to somebody, to experience that kind of kindness from somebody in a romantic relationship. And when I look back now, there's some really fucked up things, like some shit that came out in the wash when I found out that, you know, like would make me rethink on some stuff. But this is how I felt in the moment. And I had this person that I kind of had always wanted to be. And the person that was a part of it that got me to be this was now gone and like cheated on me and like fucked me over. And then I was just left with this person. And I was left with this like being, this sense of self that I didn't know. And it felt like a stranger, because without her to balance it out or to like keep creating it, I guess, then what the fuck was this? Because without her, this didn't exist. This version of me. And then she was gone. But this, I didn't die. I didn't just die. And all of the impact of her on me did not just die either. And I was aware of that now about myself. I knew these new things about myself in relationships that were like positive and happy. I knew that I could like experience like a relationship now where I could feel like loved and be treated kindly. And I don't know. It changed me as a person. And I didn't just change back to who I was overnight before I met her when things ended. And so then I was just kind of like existing with myself, but I felt like a stranger because without her, I didn't know this person. There's actually a quote. So I was doing some other reading for this, and I'm going to like put stuff below that I read, but it talks about how essentially, well, it talks about a few different things. It was actually a literature review about how romantic love and heartbreak it was called like Romantic Breakups, Heartbreak, and Bereavement. And it said something about how, it talks about how like the loss of a relationship is like the loss of a regulator. And then it says, losing an attachment figure means losing regulatory control of stable daily patterns of tasks, attention, concentration, sleep, food intake, and mood, such that they become fragmented and the individual has a sense of internal disorganization. And then it says, relationships can help maintain psychological and physiological equilibrium. And I guess that's kind of what it was. Like, I felt like I needed her in order to maintain the now equilibrium of the person that I had become, because she helped create it just by, I mean, at the very least, bringing out parts of me that I didn't know before, and I had only maintained now in the face of her. And so when she disappeared, it was like, not only was I now completely out of whack because I was just in a relationship and we had bonded really deeply, and when you bond really deeply with, there's all these like, right, these studies about how you sync up with a person. And so not only was I like dysregulating because I become like literally synced up because my life had become so synced with a person, but there was an aspect of my entire being, my identity, that had come out and been developed solely around her, just as a person who was like, to be completely honest, like experienced quite a bit of trauma, especially relationship trauma. And now I just existed without her to keep like the equilibrium. And it just felt like there was a stranger. I don't know. I felt like I was with a stranger. I didn't know myself anymore. And I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing. I think that good things came out of me that are good for me to have and to move forward with. But I didn't know it. And I definitely didn't know how to keep living as this person who knew these things about myself without the thing that like even brought those out of me. You know, these aspects of my being and my identity and like, yeah, of who I was that came out of me only in the face of really of romantic love, of kind love, because romantic love meant that much, that it was able to bring so much out of me, and for so many different reasons, I'm sure. But I don't know, it changed me, and when the relationship ended, I was left with all the changes, and I just continued to exist, and live with them, but it felt like living with a stranger, except I was the stranger. And I had to like get to know myself, the I that I had become, that had been created in the face of this romantic love, the power of this romantic love, because it's genuinely so fucking powerful. It becomes like, I don't know, like it can create life apparently. I had to like reacquaint myself with myself. I had become a different person. And I think that's part of the reason that when romantic relationships end, I feel like I was left with a new person. But there's also, I think, the very obvious other side of the coin, which is you also lose a part of yourself, and you lose an identity you once held only in that relationship, because when you get that synced up with somebody, you become somebody, right? Like they become that part of your internal world. They're like almost necessary to regulate in a way that's not even, I don't even think necessarily means codependency. They just become that attached. You become that attached or intimately connected. And so when they leave, the person that you, like the sort of life and the regulation that you developed in the face of them, and all of the little ways that affected you, that goes with them. And so you deregulate, you dysregulate, and you rebalance, and you find another equilibrium on your own, and you move forward. But the person that existed in that very specific circumstances of equilibrium, held together by that other individual, they will never exist again unless you're back in that relationship. And even then, it would never be the exact same situation twice. And so that very specific identity you held in those very specific set of circumstances and patterns and intimacy and synced upness, they cease to exist. And that version of you dies. And so it can feel like a death as well. And I feel like in my specific case, just because of my specific context, I do feel like a part of me died, except I was left with this new version of myself that had come out. I just know I don't know. I felt like I was a stranger. I was very confused about my own self. It was very weird to be alone with myself and all the things that I learned about myself without the person that like contributed to them being learned or brought them out of me. But at the same time, like, it also felt like the part of me that existed with her had died. So it was a very confusing place to be, because I also felt like I had this weird rebirth, but then I also felt like I died at the same time. And I think two things can be true at once. I think a lot of who I am came out and still continues to live and lives independently of her. But there was a life between us that we built where we were synced up. I guess if you want to like put, I don't know, an image to it, like the tethers that like tethered us, they were cut. The strings that attached us, they were cut. And so that life that existed between them, so maybe they have like nerve endings, I don't know, they have a little life, they're organisms in their own, they died. So something died when our relationship ended. And that part of us that maintained those tethers died with it. And that's fine. We move forward in life, and life is a constant cycle of death and rebirth, but you do feel that death and it hurts. And you know that a part of yourself has now died and it's gone, and it will never come back, and for better or for worse, but for better, because life will always be okay. But that is incredibly painful, and also I think can be so confusing moving forward when you feel like a part of yourself has been taken away from you really abruptly and like killed off. And then how do you contribute, or how do you continue when suddenly something that felt so vital, like almost like a lifeline in and of itself, these like tethers have just died, they're just cut? How do you keep going? Like you needed those, like those like contributed to your blood supply, maybe those had some veins in them. How the fuck do you keep just going? You know, like these were part of the life, they maintained a life, but that life was one that was only maintained by two people, and it won't maintain anymore. And that's okay, because you have your whole other life, your life that you maintain on your own. And I think the beautiful thing about being a person is like when we connect with other people, we always create like a third thing, like a special third thing in that connection that is a life of its own. And in that little third thing lives the little special you, attachment of you, extension of you that exists solely within that connection, that will only ever exist solely within that connection. And when you lose that connection, you hold on to the memory of that thing, but the thing itself, that little part of you dies, right? But you can hold on to the memory of that part of you. But that's kind of like the most beautiful thing about I think existence and relationships and connections and all kinds of connections, is that little you that exists within the connections that you create with other people, with other things, with stories, with art, with animals, with people, the little you that lives within these connections. I think that's probably, to me, like my most favorite thing about existing. It's just when one is feels so fundamental to your being, when you get that close to someone, the way that romantic love can feel, when that when that little extension of you dies that lives within that connection, it just feels really profound and sometimes sort of insurmountable, even though it's not. It just feels that way because the connection was so intense. But I think everything that we connect with, we always have that like little extension of us that lives within the lines of these tethers. It's just the more intense the connection, I think the more painful it is and disorienting it is when the connection is cut and that little part of you is, I don't know, killed. Yeah, I guess that's like really metaphorical. I don't know if that even really makes sense. I'm just thinking about it because, I don't know, romantic love has meant a lot to me in my life, and sometimes I feel embarrassed by how much it means to me or has meant to me or how much I've wanted it, and other times I'm like, it's kind of silly to be because it's meant so much to people for centuries, millenniums. It just has. And I'm sure there's so much to be said for why, right? Like socially, politically, just existentially, all these different reasons, but it's meant a lot to me, and the impact it has had on me is nothing short of profound. Like I can't deny that. It's been something that's like affected me in a way that no other relationship really ever has. And there's so many books that like kind of speak to this idea of why I think that romantic relationships like cause you to develop a sense of self-awareness that no other relationships can. That's kind of a concept covered a little bit in the book Eros, Bittersweet by Anna Carson. I made a video called like a few videos back about like limerence that I kind of talk about that and like Sappho. But yeah, I guess I'm like really getting off topic. I'm really getting off topic in general. I just like wanted to talk about this because it's almost Valentine's Day, and I was reading a lot today about masc and femme dynamics in lesbian relationships because I'm going to make a video later this week, like in a day or so, about that, and it just like made me think about my relationships and love. And then I'm like, tomorrow's Valentine's Day and I'm not in a relationship. I was like in love around this time last year, but I'm not this year, and it's really a different, it's being in love, I don't know, changes your brain chemistry. I feel like almost, I don't know, I wouldn't say I feel like a completely different person when I'm in and out of love. I don't think that's true. I just feel the impact. I can feel the extent of the impact. Like, I'll say that. I know that it impacts me in a major way. Like, the intensity of the emotion, I don't know. It's an intense feeling. Maybe that's why. But, yeah. I don't know. I'm really rambling. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk about this. There's really no major reason. So, I'm also going to make another video. I'm going to upload this really late probably, but I'm going to make another video tomorrow for Valentine's Day. That is not kind of like a sad Valentine's Day video, but if anyone else has like had their heart broken recently or experienced a lot of heartbreak or I don't know, maybe don't have like the romantic love that maybe they wish they had right now on this Valentine's Day, or they lost it recently, or they still long for it, or they fear it and they still want it. I just hope, I know how it feels, and I hope you know that you're not alone and maybe wanting something like that and sometimes feeling silly for it, because especially if you're raised as a woman, like you get like sold these really sexist, misogynistic ideas that make it so like you almost have to see yourself as this weak damsel in distress if you want love and relationships, but those are all just misogynistic, sexist ideas. Like, they're not real. Relationships and love can mean something to you and just mean something to you. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm really just like rambling. But yeah, if you also like had your heart really broken recently, I'm sorry, and just know that you're not alone. I know that pain, and if you're in that like sort of state of paralysis right now, that disassociative paralysis of pain, I hope that eventually like you can start taking steps forward, and with that, I don't know, getting your blood start to move, and then with that, hopefully the pain can start to move through you, and then eventually it will, inevitably, 100%, and it'll pass through you, and it won't last forever, and it eventually it will slowly start to fade, and no matter how long that like sort of paralysis of pain lasts, it won't last forever, I swear, even if it can feel like it. And the impact, even if it feels like the impact will always be one of pain and painful memory, and like something you'll never be able to like take with you in a way that doesn't feel like just unbearably heartbreaking and painful. I really truly don't think that'll be the case. I think with time, when things fade and like kind of like wash through you, you know, I think we can like look back on things after time has passed and see them in a way that doesn't only exist within a sort of, like I don't know, maybe like a pinnacle of a painful memory. And I think that even some of our most painful memories can eventually be remembered in a way that can almost be restorative and healing. I think my camera's about to die, so I'm going to end it here. But okay, yeah, if you're heartbroken right now, just know that you're not alone, and your heart won't be broken forever, no matter how broken it feels right now. And if you want to talk about it, if you have anything you want to share, maybe make your heart feel a little bit lighter, like you can always share it in the comments. I have a website, I'll link it down below, but you can submit something, literally anything, talking about anything. But if you are feeling heartbroken right now and you need a reason to talk about that heartbreak, please feel free to submit something, or you could just email it to me. I can also publish it on my website. People write things, and I publish some stuff on there if you want to read other people's experiences. Those are really beautiful. And also recently I've published a couple that have genuinely made me tear up when I read them. So if you're interested in reading those. But yeah, if you have anything that you want to say, you can always send it to me, and I can upload it online for other people maybe to see, or if you just want one person to see it, I'll see it. And I'd be honored to read it. And yeah, so that'll be down below, my website. I write stuff on there too. If you're interested, I wrote about my heartbreak within the past couple months, so that's on there. And I post videos on like Instagram and TikTok if you want to follow those. They're going to be down below. And yeah, I'm going to be posting 2 more videos this week. And okay, I think I'll end it here because I do think my camera's about to die. And I do apologize for any of the stuttering I did throughout this video. I drank so much caffeine, it was a mistake on my behalf, but it's too late now. So yeah, please feel free to send me anything if you want to share anything. You just want a reason to talk about it. Please feel free to share it, whether it's in the comments or send it to me. I hope it can be a reason for you to talk about something that might be heavy on your heart. And okay, that's it. Bye. And happy Valentine's Day. Bye.